everyone. So, time for some truth talking. I'm a 50-something-year-old aging biker, and I spent my formative years riding motorcycles that were sport tourers. Yeah, you might remember those things. Before the world of ADV bikes, there were sport tourers. Yeah, there's still a few floating around today. In fact, I got really excited about my Kawasaki Ninja 1000 SX a couple of weeks ago, and I posted a review on that bike, which is up here somewhere. Honestly, I'm still really excited about that bike. Still really excited about proper sport touring bikes. However, the review that I posted, I did almost 500 miles in one day, which is a lot for any bike. And then I did another 200-mile ride and just loved it. My hips, though, did not like it very much. Now, don't get me wrong, I love sport bikes and I spend a lot of time riding track bikes. But in a track bike, you do 20-minute sessions, sit down, have a cup of tea, then you get on for another 20-minute session, sit down, have morning tea, and so on. When you take a sport touring bike on the road, even though the Ninja SX is a relatively relaxed riding position, it's still a sports bike. And for me, I can't ride a bike like that unless I'm on the balls of my feet. Yeah, I could ride it somewhat flat-footed, but it just didn't feel right. Now, I'm a schizophrenic motorcyclist, and I've had so many bikes over the years. In fact, that's a whole nother video I should probably do. I had the first Multistrada back in the day. I've had many Multistradas since. But I'm not going to lie, I've always loved Hondas. In fact, my first ever proper motorcycle was a Honda. It's a Honda XR500 back in the 80s, and I've had VFR 750s, VFR 800s. I've had the CRF 300s for off-road. So, what have I done? What have I done? Well, I jumped into a Honda Africa Twin. Yeah, the new one, the 2024 Honda Africa Twin ES, which has that electronic suspension, those wonderful 19-inch front wheel, which gives it more of a road bias sport touring feeling. And it's a wonderful bike so far. And I actually got some footage on this bike. It's been a while since I got the footage. A couple of weeks ago, I finally got around to editing it. The new bike, the new Africa Twin, has a 19-inch front wheel. This upgrade supposedly enhances agility and on-road handling, making it sort of more versatile for those of us that like to split their time between highway and trails. We'll break down how this change affects the bike's performance, stability, overall ride feel. I'm also going to explore some other updates. Now, at a high level, this new 19-inch wheel, it improves handling on paved roads while providing capable off-road performance, and it definitely makes the bike feel more versatile for those of us that want a mixture of adventure and everyday riding. When you're riding down that highway and you see a dirt road and you wonder, I wonder what's down that road. Yeah, that type of rider. It retains a powerful 1084 parallel twin engine, which is a liquid-cooled parallel twin engine, delivers strong low-end torque and pretty responsive power across the rev range. It's definitely good for tackling different terrains, and parallel twins tend to be inherently that way. I really love parallel twins. One of my track bikes is a parallel twin, the RS660 Aprilia. Now, this bike does come with the optional dual clutch transmission, or DCT. I chose not to run with that. But riders can choose between the standard manual transmission or Honda's automatic. Well, they don't like it being called automatic, but that's kind of what it is. Now they say that this DCT offers a seamless shifting for a more relaxed riding experience. And you know, I've seen a lot of YouTubers, a lot of folks talk about how much they really love it, including Big Rock Moto, who's one of my favorite reviewers. Absolutely loved it. Has selectable riding modes. Features multiple riding modes. Has tour, urban, gravel, off-road, and sort of a customizable user modes, which are useful as well. Has a very advanced electronic suite, almost too advanced actually. I've kind of found it to be a little bit complicated. There's a lot of buttons everywhere, and I'll talk a little about that as I ride it. So the 2024 Africa Twin Sports, I think it aims to blend on-road versatility with odd, sort of off-road ruggedness. And for me, it sort of sits somewhere between the Multistrada V2, or the old 950, and the GS, kind of. It's actually kind of a Goldilocks feeling bike. I think it looks great. It handles really well. It has CarPlay, but the implementation of CarPlay is not perfect. I've got some tricks for that, and once you employ these tricks, you'll find it to be perfect actually. But I feel like motorcycles that have CarPlay, and there's not many, it's almost like they have like the last generation of CarPlay, what it was like in four-wheel vehicles before it got a lot better. Like for example, it's not wireless CarPlay, it's wired. There's a few niggles around getting it connected, and I'll talk a little bit about those as well. So yeah, if you're interested in the new Honda Africa Twin, I'm going to take her for a bit of a rip around the Pacific Northwest, North Cascades mountains, and we'll have a little bit of a chat about it, and I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's go. So I'm here at Lake Washington, the beautiful Seattle, and the bike has only done 30 miles so far, so I'm definitely still breaking her in and just really waiting for the right time to take it out to the mountains. So as I was saying before, right now I'm just doing a little bit of urban riding and getting to feel of her and seeing how she feels. And so far it just feels super planted. There's definitely a big difference between the 19 and 21 inch wheel that has traditionally come on it. I've ridden both now. And I'm more of a sport oriented rider, so I appreciate that feel, but I also appreciate the convenience of an ADV style bike. So here she is. What have I done to it so far? Well, in the short time that I've had it, I've put on these SW Motec luggage racks, and I'll show you those bags at some point. I really like SW Motec kit. It's really good stuff. I put on these tank grips, which are made by TechSpec, and I'll put a link in the description. I've also put on these SW Motec lower crash bars. Really nice kit. At some point I'll be putting on the light bar that goes across the front, and I'll be installing some Denali lights as well. I changed the foot pegs to these SW Motec foot pegs. Again, I really like their kit. These are just going to provide a lot more grip if I do find myself standing up. And I also put this nice brake pad on here on the rear brake, just for more grip as well, because when you're going off-road, of course, you're only using the rear brake, you're not using the front brake. I've really enjoyed this bike so far in the very few miles that I've ridden her. There's something very compliant about the way it feels around town. So right now I'm just doing a ride down to my local coffee shop, which I suppose is a place where ADV style bikes tend to be seen more than they're actually seen off-road. I think that's probably a bit of a stereotype, but certainly for me, I haven't taken it much else at this point, but I am planning to do a ride around the North Cascade Highway, and so this is part one of that ride, and I thought, well, let's just do a little bit of urban riding, just give you a feel for it. You can tell that the bike is definitely a Honda. From the minute you get on it, it just gives you that feeling of confidence. It starts up really nice. The twin engine has a nice sort of purr to it. I actually really like the stock exhaust. I'm not the sort of person that actually likes aftermarket exhaust, certainly not on the street. I just think they sound obnoxious, and frankly I don't really like the sound of loud exhausts on the street. Maybe I'm an odd one out, but that's just me. Now my Triumph Bonneville, however, has a British Customs pipe on it, full system, and it sounds beautiful. The reason I put that on is I didn't really like the long piece-uter pipes that came stock on the Triumph. So yeah, this is my neighborhood. It's a pretty typical Seattle neighborhood. We're getting close to fall now, and when I take this bike out on the Cascade Loop highway ride, it'll be the beginning of fall. So first up, let's get back to the engine. So it packs a 1084 parallel twin engine, puts out about 101 horsepower. That's sort of 77 pounds of feet of torque. So what does that really mean in real life? Well, there's plenty of power to cruise on the highway without feeling like you're pushing the bike too hard. And so far it feels like there's enough grunt to give you serious control when you're riding through the backcountry or navigating city traffic. Now that low end torque is generally really good for stop and go urban environments where you need quick throttle response, but you also want that smooth power delivery for longer stretches of road, which we're going to get to when we hit the Cascade Mountains. Now, one of the standout features on the African Twin is its transmission options, and I talked about this earlier, but you've got the choice between a 6-speed manual, which is what I'm riding today, or Honda's dual clutch transmission, or DCT for short. The DCT is frankly a game changer for those who want a clutchless experience, especially in the city where you're dealing with constant gear changes. From what I've been told, it's super intuitive too, so when you're navigating tight or urban streets or shifting up to freeway speeds, the DCT can switch pretty well between automatic or manual override. So what I've been told is you can sort of pick the best option on the fly. I really should ride one with DTC, but I couldn't find one at the time of making this video. So speaking of comfort for longer rides, Honda's equipped the African Twin with an adjustable suspension system. So up front you're looking at 45mm Showa inverted forks with long travel, and in the rear there's a ProLink swing arm setup. You get about 9 inches of travel in the front, and that's just over 8 inches in the back. So this means the bike can handle bumps and the potholes that we're seeing in the Seattle streets here, but also rough backcountry roads without sort of sacrificing stability on the freeway. So far I've found for daily riding it's a dream because it really soaks up the sort of imperfections on the road, making it really comfortable when you're stuck in city traffic and for commuting. Now, the electronics package is a highlight and a low light. I think it's a bit overly complicated, but for mixed use riders, it's got a 6-axis IMU, which is basically the brains behind its traction control. It has cornering ABS, and it even has a wheelie control feature. Not that I'm going to want to try and wheelie this baby with all this luggage on it. Now, you also get 4 different ride modes: urban, tour, gravel, and off-road. So you can adjust to the road or trail type with just a button. So in the city, the urban mode keeps the bike smooth and manageable, while the tour mode gives you that extra throttle response when you're cruising on the freeway. And if you do take it off pavement, the off-road and gravel modes optimize traction control and throttle response, so you get a better stability on loose surfaces. Now, Honda's also made sure that the African Twin is comfortable for longer distances. You're looking at an adjustable seat height ranging from about 33.5 inches to 34. So riding around here in Seattle, you'll probably notice I have a red light on the back of my helmet. That is a brake-free light, and they're not sponsors of the channel. In fact, they don't even know who I am. But if you're really anal about being seen on the street, as I am, this works on an accelerometer. So when you brake, it lights up like a Christmas tree. And when you're not braking, it's always lighting up. It's just very right there in your face. And in fact, it's so good that I've actually had drivers pull up beside me and ask me about it, like where I got it from, because they want to buy it for their friends, just saying how great it is and how it really helps you stand out in stop and go traffic in the city where everyone's so distracted on their cell phones and stuff. So anyway, enough of the city riding. We'll be heading out to the countryside soon, so let's go take a look at the North Cascade Highway, and we'll have a bit of a chat about the bike along the way. So I suppose I really should talk a little bit about the road that we're going to be riding on. It's called the North Cascade Highway. It's also known as State Route 20, and it winds through Washington's sort of rugged North Cascade Mountains, offers some of the most scenic mountain views in the Pacific Northwest. I actually like to call them the Pacific Northwest's Dolomites, and I've ridden the Dolomites and they're incredible as well. So, it's really known for its really dramatic peaks, glacial lakes, deep valleys. It's about a 120-mile stretch which connects the western and eastern regions of the state. And it traverses the North Cascades National Park. And so when you go there, there's a lot of great switchbacks, very deep forests, great overlooks and outlooks, including Lake Diablo, and opens generally seasonally due to heavy snowfall, and it's really, really popular actually just up until the mountains close. Lake Diablo is a reservoir which is nestled within the North Cascades. It's known for its surreal turquoise waters that they kind of have a vivid shade to them depending on the time of year you're looking at them, but in summertime they're especially vibrant. And the colour comes from a glacial silt in the water, which gives it kind of a sort of a different appearance. Actually reminds me a lot of New Zealand. It's formed by the Diablo Dam, which is on the Skagit River on the other side, and it's surrounded by peaks and mountains and all the fun stuff that outdoor people love. There's a lot of different viewpoints on the highway. We'll get a few of them as we go on the ride. I try to not stop too much because it's just so much fun riding. And once we get through to Winthrop, which is kind of an old western town here on the highway, we're going to ride from Lake Chelan to Cle Elum, which is another journey through different landscapes. We'll start at Lake Chelan, which is sort of a glacial lake as well, surrounded by vineyards, and then we're going to go right up into different terrain, really, really bare, dry terrain, which is sort of in the heart of the Cascade Range. And that has, again, wonderful passes. We're going to go through Blewett Pass, and this is sort of offers a sweeping vista of different rocky outcrops and evergreens. And then when we get towards Cle Elum, the route sort of opens to more dry landscapes again, which is sort of a transition to central Washington's high desert environment. So it's a really great ride to do. It's got a good blend of forested mountain roads, expansive valleys. It's just a great way to experience the diversity of the state. It's a really great part of the world to live. Yeah, it does rain a lot, but we make the most of it while we can. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling pretty hungry, and this is this random place that I like to stop at. And has really good breakfast. It's run by a super nice couple, and we'll get some American grub, and then we'll head to Lake Diablo. So I'm finding the bike to be pretty good for stopping off, grabbing a quick bite to eat, packing up and getting on the bike quickly. There's not too much fuss. It's got a nice manageable quality to it. And you can see that I am still running my Garmin GPS. I need to figure out the CarPlay. It's not quite working the way I'd like it to. I'm sure there's a quick fix for that. I'm also running the SW Motec hard panniers, the adventure set, and also their soft SW Motec Pro bag for the tail bag, which is really great also. So let's head to Lake Diablo and see what it's all about. So, this bike's been a crowd pleaser for years, especially in the adventure and dual sport world. And let's just sort of start with some of the things I immediately noticed that I really like on these longer rides. First of all, the braking system. The 2024 Africa Twin's equipped with a dual hydraulic disc setup on the front, which gives it super solid stopping power. It feels very strong, very confidence-inspiring so far. They've put a lot of thought into giving riders a balance between strong braking performance and control, I think, especially those of us that go off-road where you don't want to lock up your wheels or lose traction. And what I found is the braking system in this year's model is very well calibrated for adventure riding, so you get progressive braking feel with a really great feedback, which helps whether you're riding through traffic, tearing up gravel paths, or tackling steeper mountain passes. Obviously, it also has cornering ABS, which is a game changer, especially for newer riders, or those getting into more challenging terrain. The cornering ABS works just by adjusting brake force based on your lean angle, so you don't end up in dangerous lockup mid-corner. So I think that that's a really good thing. Now, shifting to the gears on this model, the gearbox, well, it has both a manual gearbox and an optional DCT or dual clutch gearbox. This is a manual gearbox, and I don't actually have the quick shifter yet. It's on back order, but so far it feels really nice. And I'm finding that the DCT model is also really popular from all the reviews I'm reading. And some reviewers actually seem to agree that the DCT version is a solid choice if you're looking for a relaxed but capable ride that doesn't compromise too much on control. So talking about control, something a bit more subtle is, but impactful, is the front wheel size. This 2024 model comes standard with a 19-inch front wheel, which is great for mixed surface riding. It's smaller than the 21-inch front wheel you'll find on the more hardcore adventure setups, but that actually gives it a bit more, different character. It gives you a lower stance, which makes the handling feel quicker and more responsive for road riding and even light off-road riding. So, so far so good on that. And then I'd say sort of lastly, in terms of like the actual ride height, it feels pretty good. If you're riding in different surfaces, etc., it feels pretty good. So here we are at Lake Diablo, and the Diablo Dam is just down there behind me. See why it reminds me a lot of New Zealand. So, now that I've been riding the bike for a little bit, it's probably worth addressing the elephant in the room, which is, I did a review a couple of months ago on my Kawasaki 1000 SX Ninja, which I also really enjoyed riding. And, I did a big 500-mile ride on that, similar ride to this, similar roads, some of the same roads actually. And it's fair to say that I suppose I'm in conflict with the fact that I'm turning into an old bastard, and I love the feeling of being connected to the motorcycle, and you really only get that connection from a sport bike, a sports touring bike, for me anyway. And maybe that's because I spend a lot of time riding on the track, and I love the connection to the bike. And sometimes on a ADV style bike, even the really sporty ones like the Multistradas, which I've owned a number of, you still feel like you're a bit of a human sail, sort of riding through the streets or the open roads, and you just don't feel that connection. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to drag my knee on the street. I don't think that's a good thing to do. But there is something about that connection to the motorcycle that is important to me. However, there's the utility of ADV bikes, which is unmistakable. So I think some of the manufacturers now are trying to sort of, blur the line between that a little bit. Now, the Africa Twin isn't really blurring the line, but it is a bit of something in between the Multistrada V2 and the GS for me anyway. Now, if you want something that's kind of more upright, but not a sport tourer, but way more sporty, of course, you've got, the Tracer 9 GT, the BMW XL1000, which I've owned and really enjoyed. Just found the engine to be a little bit too revvy for my liking, but that was just me. So there's a lot of new bikes entering that category that sort of even trying to blur the line even more than the Multistrada V2 is. And I really like the Suzuki as well. I just love that engine, the Suzuki 1000 GT. I just keep coming back to the twins. I just love a good twin, and this twin is really great. It's feeling really nice. It's definitely got the power as you throttle up. The revised torque, sort of especially in the low to mid range, the power acceleration there compared to even the old model which I rode feels better, especially on open stretches like this road here, or even sort of more challenging hill climbs. I think that it's got a really good responsive character to it, and it makes it feel lively, but it's still very, very much controlled. The other thing is suspension. I think the suspension on this is absolutely better than certainly the standard Ninja SX, which I had and I love, and it's I'm really conflicted right now with it because I still really like it. But I'm on the Adventure ES model, and the electronically adjustable show suspension is awesome. You can adjust it mid-route and no problem, or you can also adjust it on the fly when conditions change. On the Ninja, I had to stop to change the suspension settings, which was kind of a pain. I also find that it handles quite nicely, and the traction control is there, but it's not super invasive, and the bike feels actually more planted to me than my Ninja did. Now, it does have an IMU, which is definitely has a role in stabilizing the ride, but the Ninja has that as well. And so, so far so good. Okay, so I'm guessing you're probably all sick of the sound of my voice. So how about some nice music from a wonderful independent artist who I really like, a couple called Pearl Blanc. And I actually get all of my music from a website called artist.io. And it's a really great site for content creators to grab music and pay the artists what they're worth. I think a lot of content gets stolen or misused in the online world. And so I hope you enjoy this little track and no longer the drone of my old voice. So today we've been really diving into a couple of really incredible things, I think, that sort of when paired together create a pretty cool experience. And the new Honda Twin, Africa Twin, the scenic North Cascade Highway here in Washington State. First of all, the Honda Africa Twin is an iconic adventure bike. It's not just a new kid on the block by any means. And if you haven't studied the history, it's worth doing. It's got a pretty storied legacy dating back to the Dakar rallies in the 1980s. And Honda initially designed it as an off-road rally bike, but its versatility and ruggedness soon made it a favorite amongst sort of adventure motorcyclists at the time. And fast forward to today, and obviously it's a way more refined machine. And as I've talked about earlier, it really does deliver that on-road comfort. And if you wanted some serious off-road capabilities, even with this 19-inch front wheel, I'm not going to go off-road on this trip, but there are plenty of YouTube videos of folks doing that. Maybe I will do that next time. So what makes it unique? We've talked a little bit about some of the core features of the product and the core features of the how the engine really performs. But what I'm finding on these country roads is the bike isn't just about power. It definitely is about control as well. And these riding modes that we talked about earlier really are very noticeable, and they really do a great job of sort of really understanding the conditions you're riding in. They're not just buttons and nodes on a screen. Really, my sense is it really impacts handling and comfort. So this highway is actually known as the American Alps, and you've seen some of the sweeping vistas and rugged mountain peaks that I've tried to capture with my drone, and you've got a little bit of a view of some of the glacier-fed lakes as well. And honestly, these roads seem really custom made for the Africa Twin. You've got sort of a combination of smooth pavement with just enough challenge and just enough twisties to sort of have a little bit of fun as well. And, this bike was designed to explore remote places, and the North Cascade Highway I think is a really good match for that, because out here you're riding on what feels like the edge of the world sometimes. You're long away from the city sounds, surrounded by some of the most beautiful scenery in the Pacific Northwest. So, I'm loving it so far. It definitely feels like something I could ride a lot further on. And I've ridden across the US a couple of times on different motorcycles, and I would absolutely ride this one across the US. In fact, the next big trip for me, my bucket list trip, is to ride to Alaska, which I really want to do, and I'm planning on doing that. I talked a little bit about its rivals earlier, and I talked about how I feel like it's a nice blend between the sort of the BMW GS type bike and the Ducati Multistrada as an example. Even the Multistrada V4, which is probably in a different, they're definitely in a different league. At least the GS is still a twin. But it's obviously the GS is known for its boxer engine. It's got a bit more power than the Africa Twins, 1300cc engine, and it's got a whole ton of technology, like the Africa Twin does. It's the kind of bike you'd pick if you want absolute refinement, I think, and versatility across any terrain. I think the trade-off is that it's typically heavier and can feel a bit less maneuverable than the Africa Twin, especially off-road. Then I've ridden the new 1300 and the old R1250 GS. And then there's the Multistrada. And to be clear, I've owned almost every version of the Multistrada over the last 20 years. And I love the Multistrada. I kind of went off it when the V4 came out. I just don't get the same feeling from V4 engines or inline 4 engines for that matter. And so, Ducati obviously has a high-end electronic suite. It's got the radar-based adaptive cruise control, which this doesn't have, and the blind spot detection, which the Africa Twin doesn't have. It's obviously incredibly fast and responsive on paved roads, and very much so on twisty mountain roads. So if you prioritize speed and agility in your adventure riding, I think the Multistrada's sports-oriented nature is great, but it can also feel a bit less comfortable and definitely less stable off-road than the Africa Twin. So I think, the Africa Twin stands out by balancing sort of all of these aspects really well. It may not have the power or output of the BMW Ducati, but it delivers a versatile, adaptable ride, and it has that Honda durability, right? I think that the DCT option is a standout feature for those that want it, and it's definitely unique amongst competitors. Most of the reviews I've read are people really seem to like that a lot. So, I think in the end, like the Africa Twin so far is feeling great, it's feeling solid, it's feeling awesome. or you could decide to stay on Highway 2 and you can ride through Leavenworth, which is, some people think it's a bit cheesy, but it's a sort of Bavarian village place, sort of German themed, Bavarian themed. And then you can take a really great ride up through Stevens Pass, and then that'll take you back into the lowlands of Washington, but on the west side of the mountains. And then you can ride straight through to Seattle from there. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to ride through to Cle Elum, over here, over Blewett Pass, and we'll spend the night in Cle Elum, and then we'll go back to Seattle tomorrow. So we just rode into Cle Elum. Sun is getting ready to set, time to get a bit of gas. The bike's been pretty economical. I've gotten about 200 miles to the tank, which is pretty good. Really enjoying these SW Motec Adventure Pack hard panniers. Really quality kit, really love their products. Not sponsored by them, not an affiliate or any of that stuff, just really like them. And I also really like the tail bag that they make as well. This tail bag is really just good for just putting odds and sods into along the way. Okay everyone, so top of the morning to you. I'm riding back to Seattle now down pretty boring I-90 slab of concrete. This is I-90 west back into Seattle. Not too much to report here, so I won't bore you too much with this, but it's about an hour and a half from here to Seattle, and then I'll be home and we'll do a wrap up. One of my favorite parts of the ride is actually riding over Snoqualmie Pass. Snoqualmie Pass is absolutely beautiful, so I'm actually going to stop there and get a bit of drone footage. So as we head home to Seattle, there's a lot of boring slab or more boring slab of I-90, but we'll head in through the I-90 bridge over Lake Washington back into Seattle. And I was thinking on the ride home that, you know, it's probably a nice way to wrap it up is just to kind of talk a little bit more about, gee, where this particular bike has come from, where it is today, and maybe where it's going in the future. So just to walk you through a brief history. The first version of the bike was released in 1988. It was called the XRV 650, and it was actually a V-twin 647cc powered motorcycle, and it was sort of designed to resemble the rally bike. And then in the early 90s, the first generation of the new engine came out. Still a V-twin, but delivered around 62 horsepower, kind of maintained that rally-inspired aesthetics, but it was enhanced for better performance and comfort on the road. Second generation, a few more updates, and then the third generation just continued to refine it and really just focus more on seat comfort and a few other things. But then it took a big sleep, a long sleep, and in 2016, after a hiatus, Honda reintroduced the Africa Twin with sort of more modern features and technology. They moved away from the V-twin to a parallel twin engine, which produced just over 100 horsepower at the time and a 998cc rating. And really over the last 10 years, they made changes, more advanced electronics, multiple riding modes, optional DCT transmission. And in the last 4 years, from 2020, the engine received an upgrade to just over 1,000 cc's, about 1,100 cc's, or 1084 I think, which gave it more power and torque. They incorporated a large touchscreen display, including support for Apple CarPlay and Android, and refined a bunch of the riding aids that I talked about. And of course, they brought in some variants. They brought in the standard and the adventure sport models to cater for different riding preferences. And I suppose the most recent update has been offering this 19-inch front wheel, which honestly I've found to be just awesome. And I'd say throughout its evolution, the Africa Twin has remained very true to its roots by blending that off-road capability of on-road comfort. And you know, it's a real favorite amongst a lot of riders worldwide now, and I've thoroughly enjoyed riding it. Okay, so I'm almost home now. You can see the beautiful leaves changing color here in Seattle. I'm going to get home, shut it down, and I want to close the video on an obvious topic. So if you're curious about that topic, keep watching. We're almost done. Thanks a lot. Well, that was a really fun ride. Now, the interesting thing about sort of my history of motorcycling is that this channel for me is really just a whole lot of fun. It's a hobby, it's not a job. Turns out that a lot of you really seem to like the content, so thank you very much for supporting the channel. One of the things about my history is that I'm totally schizophrenic when it comes to motorcycles. I buy and sell motorcycles all the time, and I treat my motorcycling as a hobby, and I find that I can't learn enough about a motorcycle through a test ride. I have to own it for a while. So I resigned to the fact a few years ago that my motorcycling will be one of multiple test rides. I suppose we're always in search of the perfect motorcycle. And I always think I've found it and then I ride something else. So in the case of the Honda Africa Twin, that's definitely the case. I really almost love the Kawasaki Ninja 1000 SX that I test rode a few weeks ago. But for me, that sportiness, that connection with the motorcycle is really important, but it's more important on the track these days than it is on the street. So the Africa Twin, for me, really fits that bill. And so the reason it fits the bill, to put it into context a little bit, is that, like I said throughout the ride, it really does thread the needle well between like the very sporty Multistrada, all generations of the Multistrada, the sort of edge of sporty and touring like the BMW XR 1000. It threads the needle really nicely in the middle for me. I love twin engines. Ticks that box. It's super reliable, you can just tell. The build quality's really, really good. Really good. I don't like the way the electronics work. It's just too confusing. But I suppose that's all really picky because honestly, there's not much else I can fault in this motorcycle. I rode the old version of the 21-inch front wheel, and that was enough for me not to get the feeling that I wanted from the bike in a more spirited ride. And that 19-inch front wheel, while it sounds subtle, has made a really big difference for me. And it's a bike that I've decided to keep. So my Ninja 1000 SX will be headed the way of my good friend Tyson Moto, who runs a company called Redmond Used Bikes, or Redmond Used Motorcycles. And I think I've become probably his best customer over the years because he offloads my bikes to me and it's great. And if you're in the Pacific Northwest, or frankly anywhere in the US, and you have a habit of riding and selling bikes like me, I highly suggest you work with someone like Tyson. He doesn't sponsor my channel at all, just a really good guy. Now, the other thing a lot of you are probably wondering is, what about the Honda Trans Alp? And is that something that I would consider? Well, I used to own a Aprilia Telrag 660, and I really liked that a lot. The Trans Alp is kind of in the same category. It's a parallel twin. It's similar in terms of engine displacement, similar in terms of overall size. And I found that the Telrag, while I liked it, just didn't quite have enough power for what I was looking for. I also found the suspension settings weren't adjustable enough for me, and it lacks some of the creature comforts that I'd really like as an old guy. It really is the baby brother or sister, or whatever you want to call it, of the Africa Twin, and people really like it. So for me, I think if it was just for commuting, like just riding to work or something like the Trans Alp would probably be really great because it's smaller, more maneuverable. But because I'm planning on doing some larger tours again next year, I'm going to spend the winter breaking in the Africa Twin, and I'm hoping if I can get a leave pass from my lovely wife that I'll do Alaska next year. So yeah, overall thoughts for me, it's got the build quality of the Honda, it's got the reliability of the Honda, it threads the needle really well between sport and touring. For me, if it's someone appreciates some more of the creature comforts, I'm not quite ready for all the fanciness that the BMW RS, the GS offers, or even the Multistrada. It's got enough, it's fine, and it's a great all-round bike. So I'd highly recommend you at least try and get one for a test ride. I hope this video was useful, and if you really like the content, please feel free to like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. It does help. I do spend some time on these videos, even though it's not my day job. So thank you very much. Have a great summer, winter, fall, wherever you are in the world. Cheers.